Welcome to
It's an
Craft and
audio
Chaos.
medium.
Hey,
Welcome to the morning
shush.
zoo.
Everybody, shut up. Welcome to Craft and Chaos, a podcast for creative minds trying to thrive in the madness. Whether you write, paint, build, perform, or daydream ideas that keep you up at night, this show is your companion through the wild ride of making something out of nothing. I'm Pete Wright. This is a completely new endeavor. We're very excited about doing something that is almost, as creative people, guaranteed to make us no money. And with that,
That's where I live.
Let's go round the horn with our brief introductions. Kyle, would you kick us off? Who are you and why do you create?
Absolutely. My name is Kyle Olson, and I am dramatic. Sorry, I read that wrong. I'm a dramatist. So I do things like I create plays and screenplays and audio dramas. I sort of live in making little characters do whatever I want, and I wish I could get them to shut up sometimes.
You are not the only person with voices in their heads in this round table. We have famed author Ryan Dalton.
Known and acclaimed by dozens.
Ryan Dalton, who are you and why do you create?
Hello, I am Brian Dalton, and I create because I just have always done it ever since I was a kid. That's been my default setting. So I'm primarily an author. I have 5 published novels.
Woo-hoo.
And woohoo, thank you. And I'm also a singer, voice actor, a bit of a painter. I'm a decent amateur cook. I just like lots of artistic stuff, man.
I don't even know what to do with that. Like, I knew you as author, and now
We've run out of hyphens.
Right.
I think we all have voices in our heads, and they all sound like our 4th horse person. It's Misty Stinnet. Hello, Misty. Who are you, and why do you create?
I just want to point out, I want to start out strong and say I'm the only one here named like a horse. And so I think I win the first episode. Not that it was a competition, but I do expect a
But you totally
certificate of
do.
some kind.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, I'm Misty Stinnet. I am a producer, a creative strategist, and a coach in Los Angeles. I have 15 years of experience producing television, podcasts, political campaigns, everything that you can think of. And why do I create? I create because I think it's the most spectacular part of being a human. There are so many parts of being alive that are hard and sticky and awful and messy and gross. And creating feels like one of the best parts.
Well, that was better than both Kyle's and Ryan's. So
Yeah.
that's like
So
now
we're
I
done,
have
right?
I have to follow that. I am that was excellent, Misty. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
I am Pete Wright, and I mostly make podcasts, which I have done for the last 20 years. And I also write book. I
You have book written.
I have
You have book.
I have book. It's not
People
if
give money
you're
for
looking,
book. You take
Right.
money from people for
Right.
book to give.
Yeah. I have a book that I wrote, and it's not like Ryan's. If you're looking for adventure, don't read my book. That's what I'm telling you. It's there for other things, but I'm still very proud of it, and I like it. And why do I create? And why do I still, after all these years? I mean, it took me 44 years. I think when I learned to write my first story 44 years ago as a little kid, and I've been waiting to have my name on the cover of any book since then. Like, that's been what I've wanted to do, and I have been firmly in my own way ever since. And so I create because it's been a lifelong passion for me, and I am very excited to talk with you all in the coming episodes about why the hell it's taken me so long. So welcome to Therapy with Pete. This is going to be
You've got another
Yes.
podcast for that.
Well, what I love is that we've got a nonfiction published author, fiction published authors, playwrights. And something I did not say in my bio is I was a repped TV writer for a long time.
Wow.
So while I don't
Nice.
write anymore, I do hope to write my own nonfiction book one day.
Nice. So we have screen,
Yeah.
stage, and couch.
Mhm.
If book,
Yes.
Okay. I am very excited about this show. The format of the show, let me just get this out. We've planned it thoroughly, as in we don't know.
Yeah.
We have some segments and things we'd like to talk about. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, so this was interesting because this is our very first episode, and yet somehow we were contacted and offered a sponsorship. No money has changed hands yet because they wanted to make sure that it was there, but this showed up in my inbox, and so this is our first sponsor. So let's go to our first ad.
The only thing we can agree on. Humans need both goods and services. The other thing that we can agree on is that being a human is very difficult. That's where we come in. Our company is called The Other Orange. A place for human beings, being human. Don't look for us. We're already looking for you.
So there we go. I'd like to thank The Other Orange for being the first sponsor of Crafting Chaos. I don't know anything about them. I could not find anything about them on the web, but they believe in us. So I guess we should believe in them.
Hey, they've got no big money to spend, so we'll hear them out. We'll at least sit at the table.
Yeah, exactly. It's worth a conversation.
I should have watched that beforehand.
As a round table of creatives, the AI voice just chef's kiss,
right?
Nailed it, or shall I shivved it. It's a sharp knife between the ribs.
You know, that made me think of. Did you guys ever watch Better Off Ted? It was a sitcom.
No.
It was a sitcom ran a couple of years. It was basically this good guy who works for literally like an evil, practically a supervillain corporation. And occasionally in the show, you would see their TV commercials, and they were so much like that. They were so unsettlingly friendly but dystopian. Oh, awesome.
We're home. May I introduce my segment?
Please do.
Imposter syndrome. That wonderful psychological phenomena where you can be objectively good at something, yet somehow still believe you're a talentless fraud. And at any moment, someone's going to burst through the door and scream, "Ha ha! We've found you out, you charlatan." Studies show that 70% of creators experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. 70%. That means if you're in a room with 10 people, 7 of them are quietly panicking that they don't deserve to be there at all. And the other 3 are sociopaths. But here's the thing. Imposter syndrome isn't just irrational. It's aggressively stupid. And to prove it, let's talk about tomatoes. Yes, tomatoes. Because believe it or not, tomatoes were once considered poisonous in North America. For centuries, people in Europe were happily eating tomatoes, putting them in sauces, tossing them on pizzas, and presumably throwing them at street performers. But in the US, absolutely not, because Americans were convinced tomatoes were deadly. And this phenomenon, the rejection of something that clearly works simply because it doesn't fit into existing beliefs, is called the tomato effect. Imposter syndrome is the tomato effect of your self-worth. You could have all the evidence in the world that you're good at what you do, awards, promotions, people literally paying you money to do it, and your brain still says, "Nope, I refuse to accept this reality. I'm a fraud, and soon everyone will know it," which is insane. It's like if a tomato could talk, and it spent its entire life screaming, "Don't eat me! I'm lethal!" So the question is, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we reject perfectly valid proof that we are capable, talented people? And more importantly, how do we stop it? Do you ever feel like a fraud? Because I feel like a fraud like all the time, and it would be really embarrassing if I just said I feel like a fraud and the other 3 of you didn't. So help me out.
You, Pete. Just
Statistically, 3 of us are sociopaths.
We found him.
So, yeah.
That's right.
We've been looking for you.
Should do that Invasion of the Body Snatchers thing where we point and just go.
Or like
Get him.
Night Vale. Interloper.
Okay, get it all out of your system at my expense. I'm here for it.
We're doing it because we want to avoid this very painful, very true,
Yes.
very honest subject.
It does feel a little bit like masking right now. That's what
Yeah.
I'm witnessing. The
All right.
sociopaths are masking.
I will clear the field a little bit by
Okay.
admitting I must be a sociopath.
Ooh.
Because
Really?
I don't ever feel imposter syndrome. No, I never have, not once.
No kidding.
Wow.
I think, I think some people think if you don't have imposter syndrome, the opposite must be arrogance. But I'm not arrogant about it either. I feel like I'm confident in my abilities. I also know that I always have, new things to learn and there's always growth to be had and everything. But I also know that I'm good at what I do. So I'm fairly comfortable with it. I don't personally, I don't really identify with it. But that's why I said I'll clear the field.
I want to ask you as a follow up then, because I know that you, as a published author, you started out as not a published author, and then you were then hanging around with people who are much more established than you, and you were like, "This is where I was always meant to be." Like you never had that thing of like, "That's a real novelist. I'm just a guy who writes books."
Not that I thought it was like destiny or anything like that for that. No, but I just thought I don't really compare myself to most other authors. I think I'm good at what I do. You're good at what you do. Um, so no, I don't really get intimidated by the ones that are like more commercially successful. I just love what I do too much.
And so you just sleep well and you just like feel good about yourself and you just like sit down to write and you're like, this is gonna be pretty good because I'm pretty good. Like, does that just
Not to
feel
that extent.
amazing?
Not to that extent, because if I sit down and I'm about to write a new book, like right now, I'm outlining the next book. The next two books I'm going to write. And there's a bit of fear or anxiousness because you want to do a great job, and nothing is guaranteed, even if you feel skilled at what you're doing. But there's a little bit of anxiety just because I want to make it the best it can be. I want people to enjoy it, but I don't feel like that makes me a fraud. I think that's just trying to do anything, and if you're not a little bit afraid, you're probably not trying to stretch and improve. But yeah, I guess I've never felt like, oh, people are going to discover that I shouldn't be here, because especially like at Comic-Con, what Kyle and I do with things. If I'm on stage with other authors talking about writing, I worked really hard for a lot of years to get there, so I guess I do feel like I earned my spot.
That's a real no but answer to a yes and question. I just
So that you guys could let the sociopath step
Yeah.
back, and you
Yeah.
guys just
You sit over there in your confidence while the rest of us talk
Yeah,
about some real stuff.
right.
Ryan, was it always that way even before you felt like you had quote unquote earned your stripes or earned your place? Like even when you were starting out?
Yeah, I always knew that I would get there. As far as like, not thinking like levels of success or prestige, but I knew that I was driven to become what I felt like was a professional level writer. I just felt like if I worked hard enough that I could get there. And, it's not that, you don't enjoy the validation of getting, publishing contracts and, people telling you they enjoy your work, but it doesn't really soothe like any larger anxiety for me. I just enjoy it. I have other existential crises, I guess, but this isn't one of them.
Oh,
Sure.
good Lord, I can't wait to get to those.
Yeah.
I think I feel like the constraint that you're pushing against for me is that I have this internalized belief that some of my best creative work comes as a result of bouncing off of self-doubt. Like
Mm.
I
Interesting.
wonder if those things go hand in hand, or if that's just the way my dopamine starved brain tends to work.
So it's part of your process. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I of all the writers I know, we all do it differently, and
Yeah.
we all need different things to get in the headspace to write to what we feel like is our best. So I don't think there's any wrong answers. If that works for you, I mean, awesome.
Well, when I was listening to Ryan speak, you'll understand where I am on this spectrum because I thought, wait, that's an option? Like you can just be like, I'm pretty good at what I do and I feel great in that. And I'm going to sit down and do the great thing and enjoy it and then like go to bed and feel feel good about it because I think it's so interesting. I read a book. Oh my gosh, it might have been The Charisma Myth.
Mm.
I'm not sure. I read a lot of books for my other podcast, but
I'm sorry. It looks like my watch says it's time for a plug.
oh, thank you. Yes. Oh, thank you so much. It's called Go Help Yourself, a comedy self-help podcast to make life suck less. And we read and review popular self-help books and theories and ask thought-provoking questions so that you can decide if a book is worth your time without having to buy it and read it for 15 hours. And spoiler alert, there's a lot of garbage of self-help out there, but there are golden nuggets too. And one of the golden nuggets was that sometimes the most high achieving people have really bad imposter syndrome. But that may be that those who already feel like imposters feel like they have to achieve to fight against it. So it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg. And the author asked, her class of Yale master's students or Ivy League master's students who felt like an imposter, and like 90% of the class raised their hands. So it's so interesting, but where I am with imposter syndrome is it feels completely divorced from my objective view of my skill set. So it feels like they're two different parts of kind of warring parts of my body, because there's the logical center that goes, no, for example, when I was TV writing, no, I know story structure in and out. I've had good receptions on other scripts. I love this story. I know it's unique, etc. And then there's this other layer of fear that feels completely divorced from, it's like, but what if my radar is completely off? What if I don't? It's kind of like a mistrust of myself, if that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense. And that sort of, what answers that need for trust, right? Is validation, external validation enough? Because I sometimes find that, the intrinsic versus extrinsic search for validation. What I hear in Ryan is a guy whose head is on so straight that intrinsically he knows exactly like what his sort of creative North Star is. And that's aspirational for me because I make podcasts for a living. I have made thousands of episodes, individual episodes of podcasts. I know how to do it. And why then starting a new thing? Do I wonder, what would my high school French teacher think? Why is that voice still judging me? Like, he literally passed away. He's a great guy. I love him to death, but his voice is still in there, right?
You should put more cheese in the podcast.
Je regrette. Wait, so Pete, how does imposter syndrome show up for you?
I run out of words, and I feel very small.
In the process, like while you're actively creating.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because I'm also, I don't know if this speaks to anybody, but I'm one of those dopamine deadline guys. It takes me a little bit. Like I have to, I'll know that there's a big deadline for a project that's kind of a clogging task that I know I need to get done, but I'm kind of scared of it. And it's a beast. And, oh my God, now it's due 9:00 tomorrow morning. I'll get inspired at 8:00 the night before. Like I'm a work overnight guy. And I think that's some of my best work. And I know that's ridiculous. Like my cardiothoracic system cannot handle that stress all the time. I know that that's true. And that when I am at peace and calm, I know that I create better and longer and more robust, ideas come out of it. But the intermittent reinforcement of success that comes from dopamine deadlines is alluring.
I started out. I mean, I'm like Ryan in that I've always known this is what I was built for. I've had to do so many other things just to be able to do the thing that I was built for, and I don't make my living at it. It's all these things, but I've always known. So there's always been that inner thing. But I did struggle with it for a really long time. Like as I started to get successful and all of a sudden, all of these things started falling away where people would go, "Oh no, this is already good." And I was like, "But wait, I thought there was supposed to be like 10 drafts," and like they went back, and people were saying, "No, it's already good." I was like, "Oh, okay, I don't know." And then I started to get in my head about it.
Mhm.
But this is sort of where I got to the point where I sort of conquered it, and I don't really have it anymore. And so I'm going to tell you the long version of that, and I'm going to tell you the short version. So the long version of this comes from a television show called Inside the Actors Studio. Now, for those of you who are younger, you probably missed this entirely, but for a long time there was this show that was from the Actors Studio in New York, and it was essentially you got to see the biggest names in Hollywood stuff talk for like 2 hours about their stuff. So it wasn't this little Jimmy Fallon, we're going to throw a tennis ball around and then you're going to hype your album. It was
with James Lipton, who was a zaddy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the best, because he would take them on these long tours through their entire career and get answers out of them that you've never seen before. It was a big thing in pop culture for a long time. It went from this weird thing to like mainstream, and then it got mocked, and then it disappeared, and now you can't find it anymore. But for a period, it was the most insightful thing you could find at the time to find out what creative people were actually like, what they did, what Steven Spielberg thought about things. And one of the ones that stuck with me and still stays with me for a long time was Lawrence Fishburne. So Lawrence Fishburne had an amazing one that I wish I could find. There are no clips I can't find anywhere. It just lives in my imagination, and I'm sure on an archive somewhere. Release the tapes. But it was essentially when he was doing Othello, this is the movie version of Othello with Kenneth Branagh. He got the point where he was early days of like the first day of shooting. He is playing Othello, one of the most iconic roles in history, and he's the lead of this movie. And then he started to go, I'm Larry. I'm Larry from New York. Like I was on Pee-wee's Playhouse. Like, what am I doing about to stand up next to Kenneth Branagh, Sir Kenneth Branagh, and do Shakespeare? And he got in his head like, I don't think I could do this. Like I don't know what I was thinking. And he sat down with Kenneth to be like, I'm in my head, I can't do this. And Kenneth sort of leaned over to him and said, "I'm not supposed to be doing this." He said, I'm just a kid from the streets of England. Like I got lucky. I'm not supposed to be here. And it was one of those things when he went, yeah, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them that like, yeah, I've earned my place. I belong here. And I think about that all the time. So when I started to get the wobbles, when I started to get self-doubt, I thought about that of like, yeah, I'm not supposed to be here. So what I came down to for all that is my mantra whenever I get the doubt is screw them. Like, you can't tell me I can't be here. You can't tell me that I don't belong. Like, I do. And there's nothing you can do that's going to stop me because you're wrong.
That's such a great story. And what I'm hearing, though, is still a lot of beautiful internal self-confidence and the ability to use that to rise up against outward perceptions.
Yeah.
But I think for me, imposter syndrome, it's like the calls coming from inside the house, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I'm an imposter. Not like I'm wildly talented. I'm just, nobody else recognizes it yet. But
it's such a burden.
Such a burden.
The rest of the world's ignorance weighs on me so heavily.
Yeah. But I do remember every day. I do remember this key moment. So the way that it used to work in Hollywood, and I say used to because the entertainment industry is collapsing before our eyes. But when I entered the entertainment industry, the way that it worked back when there was a pilot season, you would work crazy hard to get on someone's desk as their assistant at a TV studio, an agency, if you were lucky for a showrunner, maybe in a writer's room as a writer's assistant. And you would work doing horrible work for no pay. When I was working at my first studio job, major studio that makes hit movies to this day, $26,000 a year pre-tax in Los Angeles. It was brutal. I had to work as a party princess on the side on the weekends, dressing up as Cinderella, throwing kids' birthday parties. Thank you. It's
I'd
all
be good at
very
that.
glamorous.
Was it Cinderella, or did you have like did they have like a menu that you would like?
Yeah,
We're gonna go to. We'd like to go
they
down
had
the
different
princess
princesses.
road.
Yeah, let's
right
do
now.
it. Let's do. If this were a video podcast, I'd insert like the
What's your Cinderella voice?
hello.
Nice.
Is this Princess Ryan's birthday? Are you 8 today? Wow. Do you want to read Pinkalicious?
I'm 8 3/4.
Yeah. And then we'd sort of, and they'd go, let me see your glass slippers. And I'd be like, I left them at home. You know?
Oh my God! So here's a product. We need a product. You can buy Misty doing your voicemail as princess.
That's right.
Nice.
That's it.
Mhm.
Side note, I did. So the store at which I work no longer exists, but it was called Lollipop Dream. Thank you.
Ooh.
It was in the Sherman Oaks Galleria.
Nice.
Sure.
And the parties were thrown in the back. But Cinderella was only hired for an hour or two, and then she had to walk to her carriage, which of course was in the parking garage and was a 1999 Chevy Lumina, which was an old police car with the what do you call that? The spotlight
Oh,
still
yeah.
on it.
Oh,
So I would
yeah,
use it to
yeah.
holler at the
Free
hotties.
upgrade.
Anyway,
Uh-huh.
I was exiting. Yep, I was exiting the store one day, and the front of the store was a retail space where you could buy little kids' clothes. And I leave this kid's birthday party, and I run smack into Nicole Kidman, Keith Urban,
Oh, wow.
and their 8-year-old daughter, Sunday.
Whoa.
Now, the kicker is she looks up at me, blonde wig, blue dress, black choker, you know, the whole 9 yards, Cinderella. And she gets starstruck with me because I am Cinderella. I'm like,
Wow.
this was 2010 or 2011. So this was like these two of the biggest stars in the world, right? And in that moment, I remembered I was like, I have a choice.
Mhm.
I can fangirl out over Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman, which
Mhm.
I don't really fangirl anyway, but I was like, I could break character.
Mhm.
Or I could give this little girl a memory.
Mm.
And so I just kind of stayed in Cinderella and was like, what's your favorite food? You know, and she was all shy. And I said,
Let's
is
see
it
what
pizza?
Nicole wants to
You know,
eat.
yeah, she's like, it's duck à l'orange, you know. But I was like, is it pizza? And she, you know, kind of nods her head, yes, all shy, you know. And it's so anyway. And then I said, well, I've got to go now, you know. And they were just like, thank you.
And Nicole said, "We come to this place."
I don't get the reference, Kyle.
No?
I'm sorry.
They did.
You haven't seen the
Outstanding. 2 out of
Nicole
3.
Kidman
2 out of 3.
oeuvre.
Yeah, the
Over.
whole thing.
So back to the imposter syndrome thing. This is a long walk for a short jump, but I will land this plane, which is you work for no money forever on a desk doing terrible tasks so that you can eventually get a chance for someone to read your script, your TV script, or you can eventually send it to an agent and they rep you, right? And it's a really tender transition to go from being a Hollywood assistant to saying, hey, I'm a writer now, right? And a lot of people only know you as an assistant. And for as creative, the creative output that Hollywood has, it is executives have very small imaginations, imagining anyone in a different role. And I remember that at that time, I had done all of my work, all of my blood, sweat, and tears. I had reps. They were setting up meetings for me, but I still didn't feel like a writer. That imposter syndrome is absolutely raging. And I had to just start acting like a writer for me to believe it. So I had to go through, I'm an imposter, but I'm in the lobby of this meeting. And I sit there and I go, yes, I'm a writer, but I don't believe a word that's coming out of my mouth to the people I'm having a general with, et cetera. But somewhere along the lines of doing that, maybe 5-10 meetings in, I started to go, oh, I am a writer. I am doing it. So it was the walking the walk before I actually believed it within myself. You know?
Yeah, you become what you practice. Like,
Sure.
that's the thing.
Sure.
And you start out as a spy. Yeah, and that's honestly that is a way to approach it of like, I'm infiltrating these. They don't know.
Exactly.
They're all fools.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wait till I get their secrets.
That's right.
Nobody knows I'm a horse.
Nobody knows I'm a horse.
But just start walking like one. This segment needs a better name, but I'm going to call it Late Bloomers. Late Bloomers. And I don't mean, what you wear under your skirt in the 1800s. I mean folks who were not wunderkinds and did not win an Oscar at age 19 or, best album of the year at the Grammys when they were 25. So I am always inspired by late bloomers because I feel like, especially in America, the story is like, you make it when you're young. Like there's something wrong with you if you are in your mid 30s, your mid 40s, your 50s, your 60s, and you still haven't had commercial success. So I have pulled together 3 inspiring late bloomers for us to discuss, which you may not know.
We're doing a French fried free-for-all and let the chips fall where they may. Today, on the French Chef.
Julia Child absolutely transformed American cooking after discovering her passion relatively late in life. Julia Child was born in 1912, and she worked in advertising and for something called the OSS. It was the precursor to the CIA during World War II, and she met her husband, Paul. They moved to France for Paul's job. It wasn't until she was 36 years old that she had her first transformative French meal that sparked her culinary journey. She decided to enroll at Le Cordon Bleu cooking school, even though she had 0 professional cooking experience. And it took years of rigorous study and collaboration with her French friends. And she did not publish her first cookbook, which was Mastering the Art of French Cooking, until she was 49. And then she had her television show called The French Chef, which debuted when she was 51. And that is what made her the household name that we know of today. And she broadcasted well into her 80s. Are you guys familiar with Vera Wang?
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? I'm wearing Wang right now.
And loving it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So Vera Wang didn't even touch design until after 40. So she was actually a competitive figure skater who narrowly missed making the U.S. Olympic team. Right? So this is like a wildly different path she could have been on. And she spent 17 years after putting aside her figure skating year as an editor at Vogue magazine. So again, not at all. I mean, that's fashion, but not at all in like the design and the construction of clothes, right? But then when she was planning her wedding at age 40, which some back then would have said was a late bloomer too, thank you, Wang was disappointed with the bridal options available and she designed her own dress. This experience inspired her to open her own bridal boutique in 1990. With no formal design training, she revolutionized bridal wear by bringing a high fashion sensibility to wedding dresses, and her designs soon attracted celebrities and expanded into collections, fragrances, jewelry. Now in her 70s, Wang has built a billion-dollar fashion empire and continues to influence the industry with her elegant and contemporary designs.
That's amazing. And I'm looking at pictures of young Vera Wang on the ice. That's not a thing I expected to do today.
Oh, did you find some?
Yeah.
On the internet?
In fact, I think they're on the internet. No way.
Never heard of finding obscure things on the internet. Where did you go? What website?
No, in
creativity comes in all ways.
My personal archive of Skaters Weekly.
Surely it wasn't on
That's
Google.
right. So my third, and by the way, I had to narrow this down from a very long list, so we will be bringing this back at certain points in the podcast. My third is one of my favorite actors ever, who is Alan Rickman. So Alan Rickman didn't commit to acting until his 40s. He was born in London in 1946, and he initially trained as a graphic designer and ran a successful design agency before going acting full-time. Though he had always been interested in acting, he considered it an unstable career and pursued it only as a side interest. At 26, he actually applied to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, but didn't fully commit as a professional until he was 42, when he finally left his design career behind. His breakout role came as Hans Gruber in Die Hard in 1988, when he was 42. And of course, Rickman went on to create iconic characters, right? Severus Snape in Harry Potter, Colonel Brandon in Sense and Sensibility. And despite his late start, he became one of Britain's most respected actors. And he played iconic characters until his death in 2016.
By Grabthar's hammer. What a great story.
One of the best.
I have a funny story just about, because I only knew him as the Die Hard guy for so long. And then when I was watching Sense and Sensibility, he came on screen and I went, oh no. Hans Gruber's there. What's Hans Gruber doing there? And then I realized I had some sense of my own. And oh yeah, he's an actor. He can play a good guy too. But just that visceral reaction at first, which tells you what an amazing job he did as Hans Gruber, that I was like, surely he can't play a good guy in this one.
You also didn't know he was a wizard at the time. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those hidden,
very different.
One of those hidden talents that he didn't talk about.
I just got on the telex. I think we have another sponsor.
Oh, it's true. It's for this one. I decided I wanted to expand our horizons a little bit because, as much as we're obviously very successful people who are doing this, we want to try and give our hands. So I found this video that did not have a lot of views, but it was from an author who had put out a book. So I wanted to do what we can to help struggling authors who are trying to get the word out that maybe. It's very difficult to break through the noise. So
it's so difficult. So why not start on episode 1 of this weird podcast?
Yeah, exactly. Like try to give them a leg up.
That's marketing. That's marketing. Thank you, Kyle. Here we go.
Archie's grandfather has always been his hero. But now, Alzheimer's disease is slowly taking him away, as if his memories are burning one by one. Archie desperately wants to help. Inspired by real-life adventures in Grandpa's journal, he creates shared fantasies with epic quests for them to tackle together, helping Grandpa remember who he was. But the fantasies can't fix everything, and nothing can last forever, can it? As Grandpa's memories fade, Archie must deal with the reality of what he's losing, and decide what it truly means to live a life worth remembering. This Last Adventure by Ryan Dalton.
I love it when major publishers decide to sponsor podcasts. Just a sign that the business is thriving.
I really should watch these ads ahead of time.
That was a real trailer for a real book that you can really buy, created by and narrated by Ryan Dalton, who did not know that I was going to pull it off of the internets and
did not even know you had that link.
I hear there's all kinds of things on the internet.
Heard. Big Vera Wang territory, the internet. Big.
You know what it's, I'll tell you what, maybe I don't deal with a lot of imposter syndrome, but perfectionism is a tough one. Yeah. And all I could think in listening to that was, you've got some plosives. You've gotten better recording since then. You should re-edit that.
Isn't that funny that perfectionism is sort of the evil twin of imposter syndrome, right? Because it forces you to use the same strategies, right? It forces you to keep thinking about the things that you've already done to make them better and better and better. It comes from a little bit of a different furnace, but the maladaptive behavior that comes at the end of it is the same and equally stressful for me, at least.
Yeah, interesting. I definitely have to talk to myself about that kind of thing. Look, it's good. You're there. That's a family trait, and we all know that we've even talked about that. We all deal with really intense perfectionism, and it ends up manifesting as impatience a lot of times. And so I try to be work on that by just being a more patient person in general, in life and in also the process of all this stuff, and in making peace with the fact that all of this creative process is iteration and incremental improvement. And I've gotten better about that part. But even at times I still have to stop myself and be like, look, what you did, a couple of years ago, of course you're going to be better at it now. You can't judge 2 years ago by what you're able to do now. And so that voice it can crop up sometimes where I'm like, no, you did good for where you were at then. Just appreciate that you're better now.
Kyle, where do you stand on perfectionism? Do you deal with that?
I don't, just because this I could probably think of a better example, but the one that comes to mind is and I apologize for bringing up Star Wars in the first episode, but eventually it would have to have Roger Ebert, when he was reviewing Star Wars, said that he has an exact moment when he knew that it was more than just a good movie, that it was something special. And that moment is not what you would expect. It's not Luke and confronting or being heroic, or Han Solo coming to save the day, or any of that stuff. It was when they were transporting Chewie through the Death Star in disguise. And he's got the manacles, and they're walking through, and a little droid, the mouse droid is what we have, runs up and beeps at them. Chewie yells at it. It goes, woo, and it runs away. And he's like, right then he was like, I know that I am in the hands of a master, because the fact that he took the time to do this stupid gag in the middle of his big sci-fi epic meant he had the confidence to go, nope, this works. And so I think about that kind of stuff when I go, the difference in the flavor is what makes you the chef versus the cook. And so I sort of got to the point where I'm like, I'm not trying to please everybody all the time. I'm not trying to do this stuff. Like I'm okay now leaving in the weird parts, even if I don't exactly know what they mean, or if anybody's going to recognize them or respond to anything. But I'm like, yeah, this is a little bit of something extra. This probably could be cut out. This probably would be fat. They would consider that, but you cut the fat, you cut the flavor. I'm even thinking about Julia Child a lot. I don't know why the cooking metaphor is around.
Oh dear! Don't be afraid.
Right?
Keep the fat in.
Exactly. But it's I've gotten to that point where I'm like, I'm perfect is the enemy of good. So like I get to the point where I'm like, I don't want it to be a smooth, polished machine. Like I want it to be a little weird and a little lumpy, because that's what makes it mine, as opposed to the same thing that everybody else does. I'm not trying to make a McDonald's hamburger. McDonald's is already making McDonald's hamburger.
They're doing fine. Yeah. You've said something about, maybe it was about this show or some other show that we were working on. It was like, let's go ahead and practice in public. So Misty, I turned to you because of the four of us here, you're the one who gives the strongest like former class president vibes. And I'm curious how that
100%
said with love.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how if you've had a similar struggle with perfectionism.
Oh, yeah. And thanks for tossing it to me, because I was going to toss it to you, which I will after this. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm already realizing I'm just going to be the most earnest one on the podcast. So I'll just put on my little earnest hat. But,
what? Why are you throwing those kind of daggers? I don't understand. I can be earnest. Jesus.
Squeeze out some tears.
Prove it. We cannot. Yeah.
Misty makes
I
me
love
so
it.
mad.
All right, guys.
Super earnest.
We're going to have it out in episode 1. We're going to get it all on the table.
That's right.
All this drama that's built up this last half hour. We can't stand it anymore.
We love it. I have a lot of really nice things to say about and to
You're gonna
Pete.
hear it.
I do. I'm obsessed with him. I love him. Yeah. So the truth is I grew up very poor. And I knew I had to put myself through school. I knew that I had to get a job and keep a job at a very early age if I wanted to eventually buy a car, which I don't know if you guys were in this position or if you remember this at all, but like the thought of saving up $1,000 for a car was like, I'm never going to make that amount of money. Like, I'm like, I'm going to have to wash dishes in this hospital kitchen for like 10 years, And that's $1,000 car that gets you like half a tire these days.
Right.
So it's like,
but you had a spotlight.
That I did eventually. That was the second car, and rubber floors. It used to be, and Recaro racing seats in the front seat. It used to be a cop car.
And you dealt with imposter syndrome driving that? Man.
Not while I was in that bad boy, just when I stepped out on the streets. No, but so my perfectionism came from an incredibly high stakes place. Like there's no safety net. So I better be number one in my class. I better have all the credentials. I better be a high performer at even my high school job, theater, all those things. And then in college, it was like, well, I got all these scholarships. I have to keep them. Right. And even the like, sow your wild oats, like get drunk in college and party and like date around. I didn't do any of that because I was like, no, I have to pass chemistry on the first try, because my scholarships were for pre-med, among other things. And then I saved up enough as a bartender and a waitress to move out to LA, but I only had like, oh my gosh, like a few $1,000s in my bank account, which was gone in the first like 3 months that I lived here. So I had to hustle and be the best intern to get the best desk job and then work as the party, so it was like, now as I'm nearing 40, I'm just now able to even play around with putting down my perfectionism. Right. And I can see looking back how it has deeply served me. And it did help me build a career and it did keep me safe. And it also stifled my development in some ways and absolutely stifled my output. And now, even with my podcast, my new website, my own creative projects, I have had to really actively work at like, nope, put it out and see what happens, because that's just coming from a place of fear. So I would say I'm a recently recovering perfectionist, and my best friends are like, whoa, you're just gonna master that episode and like not edit the ums out of it. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And they're like, who are you? But it feels so much better to be in my body, in this mindset. And to Kyle's metaphor of the cooking, it's so interesting, Kyle. I'm a foodie too. And I've gotten the chance to eat at some of the world's best restaurants. And one of them was Central in Peru. And this was the number one restaurant in the world for like 5 years. And I could not recognize a gosh darn thing that came to my table. Like they'd be like, this is carrot puree and whatever, but it was gastronomy to the nth degree. And I'd be like, okay, let me have my, potato starch bubble and see how that tastes. And that was like the highest form of perfection. But you tell me that a piece of banchan fried chicken does not taste even better, than those kinds of things. So I question myself, like, what is the point of refining? And like, Ryan, that ad that was just read on air that you're having those refining thoughts about, like, oh, that was 2 years ago in the plosives. My question is like, yeah, but do we know about your book? Did it get the point across? And do we know where to buy it now? Like the substance of the meal is there. Like, who cares if you had Malden sea salt on the top of it?
That's a great point.
So.
Yeah,
it's a great point. Yeah. It's I'll remember that going forward, because it is kind of an ongoing, that's kind of the voice in my brain that I do wish sometimes would be a little quieter. This new series that I'm working on is actually really good for that, because I'm just creating what I love to create in a story that I've had in my head for years. I'm writing down anything that I want to, and it doesn't matter if someone else is going to think it's funny or not. I think it's funny, so I'm going to write it down. And it's very freeing to just completely self-indulge. And then also, it's wild that the first book is out now, and I've got people who've read all my stuff that say it's the best thing that I've ever put out.
Hey, all right.
There you go. Funny what happens when you just completely let who you are to the core spell out onto a page, regardless of and I just, there's going to be a lot more books like that coming.
Awesome.
Yeah. I write my audio drama podcast is the Swashbuckling Ladies Debate Society, and so that's been thank you. We just
it's totally worth that. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's a great title.
Yeah, I like long titles. So I got to we just finished up the 5th season. So as you're hearing this, the 5th season finale is airing. It became so big, it had to split it into 4 parts. But along the way, I got to the point where I was stuck and thinking like, oh man, I have to do all this. I have to do it. I have to do this way. I have to have it this length and stuff too. And then one day I sat down and just went, no one's making you do it this way. No one's like, whatever these constraints you're putting on, like, Like, no one is actually making, you can have it as short or long as you want. You don't have to follow this. And I just sat down and went, okay, if I got to remove all barriers, what would it look like? And I wrote, essentially, I just sat down and wrote like a 75-minute episode that was more emotional, that was more truthful, even though in my weird little fantasy world in the 1900s of a queer couple fighting weird pastry chefs and things. Like, it was more honest than I had been. And I went, oh, I can just do that, and I put out, and then I feel like that was the point where like everything shifted. And after that, it was like, oh, I can have like emotional truth. I don't have to just like make good jokes. I can actually say something in these. I can have it mean something more to me. And that was like a thing that something like unlocked in my head. And after that, everything else I wrote, I was like, oh, wait, I can like be honest with emotions in these things. And since then, everything that has come out, people have been like, oh, hey, this is like not just about whatever that thing is. It's actually about relationships. It's about, love and death and all these different things. I was like, oh, right. You can do that too. And I sort of had to learn that along the way. It took me that long until I was like, oh, I don't have to hide that part. I can make that like full center.
But in so many ways, I thinking about what Misty said about like how perfectionism served that part of your life. I think that's what and really all three of you guys have said essentially the same thing, right? Like you've got to get through all the things that, whether you're confident about it, to the nth, like Ryan all the time, or
must be nice,
or sort of wandering in the village, creating, your queer pirate romance, like Kyle, or building a career that you thought was going to be the basis of your future, and doing all the stuff that you had to do. That behavior served the right part of your life. As a recovering perfectionist, I'm sure glad you came into our lives now, because you would have been hardcore, I think. And I don't think you would have trucked with us, because we'd be annoying, I think.
These guys don't take anything seriously.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, actually, on the email chains to set up this podcast, I was like, oh my God, they're so on it. I was like, I need to step up my game. Good Lord. We had a conversation about an ampersand. It was great.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Those are triggering.
Yeah.
I
The ampersand killed my uncle. Just a long story.
In the spirit of always leave them wanting more, this has been a fantastic experience with you guys, and I'd like to start a thing. I don't know if it's going to stay, but I would like to start a thing where we talk about what's next between now and our next episode, the next time we sit down together. What is currently queued up in your creative life, and what are you looking forward to having shipped in some way, shape, or form, whatever that means? And I will start, because I want to give you an example. And that is, I'm working on a new podcast called Headstone. And it's a show about what it means to have a life well lived. And it's all through the gimmick of what you want written on your headstone. And I have 2 episodes that are completely finished. I have a trailer that's written, and I would like to get at least another episode recorded and edited and done before I start releasing them. Between now and then, I would like to have this show out the door. And it's really hard, because it's the first time I've ever done a show that's just mine. In 20 plus years, I have never done a podcast without some sort of co-host production support. And it is about the most me kind of conversations you can get. Like it or not, this is who I am. And I'm fascinated by it, and I hope other people like it, but I kind of don't care. So maybe that's a good thing. That's what I hope to ship, is a new podcast from Pete starting before we record next time. Misty.
And I'd like to add that I have listened to the first episode, and it's very good.
As have I.
It's very good. Fabulous.
Thank
yeah.
you, guys.
So glad you're doing that.
Thank you.
It's heady stuff.
Yeah.
From the guy who's known for just chatting about movies. Like, you get into some real stuff. No, you get into
Didn't
some
know
real
I was capable of it.
Hey, we're all showing different sides of ourselves, and I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you both
really
very
it's
much.
really rich. And when I listened to the first episode, I was like, oh yeah, you're supposed to do this.
Yeah.
Like
Oh.
this is a format that you're supposed to. It felt very natural. So everyone listening,
Mhm.
if you like to talk about death stuff and
Mhm.
legacy, death stuff,
So you have
head on
that
over to
looking forward
Headstone
to.
with Pete Wright. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Pete also knows I'm not afraid to talk about death at any moment.
Nope.
So
We're in the club.
nope. But I can crack a joke as well.
What's
I
your
say as I stare off into the distance. The
what's
thing
your
that I
project?
really want to, the thing that I'm desperate to ship is the new iteration of my website for my podcast. Now, I've been writing the copy for months with a professional copywriter. We had all the headshots done, rebranded twice. Like it's been this massive, massive, massive thing because we're trying to really launch and take a risk on building it into a larger company. But my web designer has disappeared twice. The first time for 5 weeks, dead silence, no matter what we did. And then they came back, apologized profusely, did some awesome work, and promptly disappeared again. And this is one of those moments, right? About perfect or done. So I've got I'm not a web designer, so this is a little bit of a trick answer. But it's like, how can I pull in someone to launch the minimum viable product to have something out there? Because there's something that happens in my creative process. I'm curious if it does for you, where it's like, I have all this momentum for an idea. And then if it passes a certain threshold, it dies. And I can feel the enthusiasm dying, and I refuse to let that happen.
Yes.
So I've got to
Don't let
find
that happen. Okay, so now you have we're 3 new accountability partners. Don't let it die.
Oh, God.
And we can't wait to see the website before we record next time.
Fabulous.
Isn't that delightful? Look at all the pressure.
It's terrifying.
Added.
It's terrifying,
No.
but maybe it'll work. Yeah.
It may work. Let it fuel you. All right, Dalton.
So yeah, I mean, I'm in the midst of preliminary work on these 2 books, so I don't think I'll have shipped anything by the time we meet next, but I will have made a lot of progress. So I have 2 alter egos that I write as. So there's the Ryan Dalton, who's really me, and then there's the masked author, who's Archer Thorne. So as Ryan Dalton, I had started on a book that my agent and I had talked about. So we have 2 in the queue that I'm going to be writing one and then the next one for her. So I had taken a break from that. So very soon I'll kind of resume development on that. I had written the first quarter of it when I ended up taking a break, but I've got some redesigning to do. As Archer Thorne, I am outlining the 3rd book in the Black Cape Saga, and I'm just having a blast, man. It is, and I've loved everything that I've published, and I've loved all the stuff that I've written that didn't get published. And this is, I think, my favorite thing I've worked on. It's just so much fun, and I can be kind of like what you were saying, Kyle. I can be silly. I can have crazy off the wall action. I can have my odd brand of comedy. But then I can also have, I kind of look to Scrubs as sort of the model. I can also have moments of poignancy and tragedy and real, personal moments. And so I like having all of that in there once. And I'm just, I'm getting to plan a long form series and put in stuff that I know is going to play out over multiple books. And I'm just having a blast with it. I know characters in my head that nobody else but me has met yet that I'm so excited for people to meet. And I'm just having a blast.
That's awesome. I can't wait. And I can't wait for the next book trailer. It's going to be a banger.
Did you like that NPR voice that I put?
So good.
This
so good.
last adventure. It reminded me of Deep Thoughts by Jack
Handy. Outstanding. All right, Kyle, what are you going to ship between now and next?
I'm in a very interesting place right now because I just finished like 4 projects in the course of like 2 weeks. And so I am in this big place of exhaling because like all of these things are done. So like I love writing, but like having written, ooh, that's the stuff right there. So I'm in this thing now where I'm like just enjoying the fact that I did a bunch of things and they're all done, and like they're sort of making their way out into the world, and I'm looking over the things to like what I want to dive into next. I have like 4 different things, something I started, and one thing I'm super excited about, but I don't know if I'm ready yet. Like it's that thing of like, hey, like you've been sprinting, are you ready to do a marathon? And I was like, marathon sounds fun, but I'm a sprinter. I don't know that I could do a marathon. So I'm using this momentum right now of just like doing the bird's eye view. So I'm right now I'm just letting everything happen and then seeing what sort of jumps out at me. But it's a nice place to be where I know that I have stuff I have the wind at my back right now, and I can just sort of see where my compass leads me.
I really like this. There's a concept from a fellow that I like very, very much, Dr. Kurosh Dini, who's a psychotherapist and a concert pianist and just an all-around clever guy. And I love talking to him. He has this concept that he calls the visit. And it means a lot to me, the visit. All it means is you've got something that's on your brain and you know you want to make something of it, but you're not quite sure what that thing is going to be, what it's going to look like. But it's hard and you're wrestling with it. And a lot of people will sit back and kind of let it percolate in the back of their minds. And what he advocates for is to touch it, find a way to touch it, to write something down on a pad of paper about it, to bring out the files that you would normally work, even if you don't do anything substantive with it, with those things on any given day. Just put your hands on it, put your fingers on it, and take a couple of good deep breaths with it, and know that it is front of mind for at least a minute, and then put it away again. Maybe today's not the day. But what I find when I think in terms of the visit is I'm also thinking in terms of eventually this is going to be made real. This is going to be something that I can turn into something people can read or listen to or watch. And that's become a really powerful kind of metaphor for this kind of conversation, which is I don't want ideas to just get starved in the back of my mind. I can't let that happen. So how do we visit them every day to move them forward?
I think that's a topic, I think, for another time, because there's some really interesting metaphor. Because even Ryan Dalton and I have talked about the different metaphors you use for your imagination. Like Ray Bradbury talked about the fruit cellar. Like he would like put stuff down there and then pull out the jar and go, "Is this ready yet?" And he'd go, "Nope, that's not ready yet." And he would, until he found one that was ready, and then he would start writing.
Dear God, now it's a potato.
Right. Yeah, but like that particular metaphor never worked for me, so I had to find something else that was different. But I think that's part of it too. As we'll learn about the process, is like you have to figure out how you have your mental space set up.
Yeah.
To make sure that your ideas don't die.
This has been lovely. Thank you guys for embarking on this particular journey. Kyle, Ryan, Misty.
Good start.
I'm really thrilled that this is happening. I don't think we necessarily need to end with plugs. We'll be plugging things all the time. I think we're fine. So we'll just leave it at that. I will thank you for your time and your attention. Dear listener, please write to us. Let us know. The website is craftandchaos.fun.
That's right.
Because that's what we're having here.
Amazing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's
Yep.
so good.
Craftandchaos.fun.
Here for the
and when
fun.
you go there, there's a button that says something that will indicate write to us. It might not use those words, but it'll be an obvious button where you can send us a note. And we encourage you to send us notes because we want to know what your creative process is like and how you make stuff. And you ask us questions, give us ideas. We are open for business.
Share recipes.
Share recipes.
We're all foodies.
You have been listening to both Craft and Chaos. Thank you for listening, you big weirdo.
Go tell weird stories.